So on Thanksgiving morning, when I woke up, the voice surprisingly started talking to me because I knew I had a long afternoon of small talk, dreaded small talk ahead. So I got on not one, but two sobriety calls, shared on both, did a brief share for social media, and then a little longer share for YouTube, and then took a shower with a cold shower finish, an extended cold shower exercise dance. So many dopamine hits, that voice didn't stand a chance all day. Stay tuned. I want to talk about my Thanksgiving. I had, done a recording that morning just talking about how the moment we wake up, especially on holidays, especially in early sobriety, that voice works on us. I'm 8.5 months in. I'm feeling totally back where I was when I quit for 3.5 years. But when I woke up that morning, kind of voice briefly spoke to me, and just said, today's the day. You got to go to your cousin's house. There's going to be a bunch of people there, including ones you don't see that often. So you're going to have to do a lot of small talking and perhaps be the entertainer, which, just for me is torture, which of course then gets in the head of, now I got to somehow survive this day. And drinking for us is a survival mechanism, until we learn to live life without it. And until we learn to embrace or get comfortable with the uncomfortable, or actually embrace the uncomfortable. I actually shared about that on Thanksgiving morning, and said how, you got to embrace the tension, embrace the fear that builds resilience, which creates greatness. And actually the moderator, she jumped in and said, yeah, I've really learned to embrace the discomfort. I mean, it's an amazing place once you can get there. And think about it. The worse it is, the better story it's going to make to share the next day, whether it's with your friends or on a sobriety call, and the stronger it's going to make you the next day. So I almost look for those kind of things now. And often it's never as bad as we think. So in this case, got to my cousin's house, conveniently an hour late. Didn't really plan that. I would always get there half hour late anyway for any occasion. Rude to be on time. But I was an hour late because I actually shared on a couple calls that morning, and I actually did a bunch of work, shockingly. So recording work, that is, which I usually procrastinate like crazy. But when I've got a true sense of urgency, it really helps. Those with procrastination issues might relate to that. I really have a hard time having an artificial sense of urgency, i.e. when I don't have to be somewhere. But I'll tell you, when I got to be somewhere, I'm a machine. And I always think, damn, if I didn't have to be somewhere, I'd be so productive all day today. But of course, it's not how it works. It's crazy. So anyway, it went completely fine. And it reminded me of last Christmas was that we rented a house up in New Hampshire, this farmhouse, just with my parents, my brother. My sister and her family were out of town. There was another family staying on the land that take care of this farm we were on. And it was just the two parents and then two teenage boys. And they would come over for dinner every night. And the first night, I thought, I've been drinking leading up to this trip, but not during the trip. I never drink with my family. Luckily, don't even need to, but I was never supposed to be anyway. But I thought, how am I going to get through this, dinner? I'm going to have to be the, help my mother, of course, be the entertainer. My mother with the Irish side was always making conversation, and I try to assist. But I sat down, looked right at these two teenage boys who were just, as I like to say about my former sales life, used to say that sales engineers that worked with us were unapologetically boring. At least mine was. My particular was. Loved the guy, but he was kind of unapologetically boring. And I said, that's going to be me. And that's what, for the most part, teenage boys are. And that's what I did. I just sat back and let everybody else do the work, and, especially the wine drinkers. And that's what I did. And it was great. Weren't a lot of wine drinkers at Thanksgiving, but same thing. Just no pressure to be the entertainer. I had a therapist many years ago when I told her every time I went out in Boston, I would pre-drink. I hated just walking in a room sober, the awkwardness, but also I felt like I had to walk in and be, funny guy, Cappy. And she said, Brian, I'll never forget, you don't have to be the entertainer. You don't have to be the clown. And I've tried to take that to heart. And I heard a woman share about that recently. He said the exact same thing on a sobriety call. And then I mentioned that on a share where the moderator was actually a former comedian. And she absolutely, of course, said the same thing. And as you may know, all comedians, I think, really struggle with substance abuse for that reason. So it went completely great. Fears were unfounded. From there, drove about 2 hours up to Loon Mountain, New Hampshire. My cousin lives on the New Hampshire border. It was only supposed to be an hour and a half. It ended up 2 hours because it was some pretty bad weather about halfway up, snow. And but A, one thing, I was glad to not be remotely tipsy. And B, I just really enjoyed the drive. The old days I'd have to put on talk radio. Never want to be stuck with my own thoughts, my own negative thoughts. They say we have, 60, 70,000 thoughts per day, and 95% of them are repetitive, and a large percentage maybe of those are negative thoughts, especially when in the throes of drinking. So now I like to say, I still have talk radio, but it's in my head, and I love it. I love all the thoughts in my head of, that song, Pink song, A Million Dreams, lie in bed at night, a million dreams fill my head, and future share. But so yeah, I just love it. Satellite radio, love it. Alternate between Christmas music, regular music. I love that satellite can see about 6, 7 stations at once. So being a perfectionist, I'm always looking for the best song, and I spend my whole time scrolling up and down between the first 30 stations, and always trying to find the best song. But music has absolutely come back in my life big time. Again, when I was in the throes of drinking, I had to have basically talk radio on at all times. Just couldn't enjoy music because it meant I'd be stuck with thoughts of my own negative thoughts in my head. So love it. Singing in the shower, singing in the car. I recently shared a meme that said something to the effect of, I don't just sing in the car or the shower, I perform. And it's so great on your mind. It's an absolute mind trick to sing, to smile, to be happy. I actually even laugh in the shower, kind of force myself to laugh. It's kind of almost sadistic, but I could laugh on command. I'll just start just going, for no reason other than to trick my mind that I'm, having a great time. Because I was, especially when I wasn't laughing enough, again, in the throes of drinking. Now I laugh a hell of a lot more. And I guess that'll, bring me to kind of wrap it up this year. I think technically have a lot more to say, but I vow to keep these shorter. But, I mentioned how being sober leading up, I mentioned on a recent couple social posts, media posts, how great it is and how important it is, not only being sober for a holiday or vacation, but in the time leading up to it. At minimum, say a week leading up to it, because drinking, I shared this meme that said, for 15 minutes of euphoria, we're left with 3 days of anxiety, and first nausea, but then anxiety, etc. That lasts for at least 3 days, if not longer. And depending on how many days you're drinking coming into it, even if you stop, to me it would last for at least a week. And in past vacations, even not drinking during them with family or holidays, I'd still be pretty miserable. And rather than thriving, I would just be surviving. But this trip, I had a great time. I absolutely thrived the entire time, and it was so nice that I enjoyed every minute of it. And a great quote I heard from a guy that's 33 years sober. He said, "I'm always having fun." This is a very older gentleman, but he said, "I may not always look on the outside, but I'm having fun in the inside." And I ended my share recently when I talked about this fun weekend that, yes, plot twist, you can have more fun sober than drinking. And I absolutely did, and I absolutely do. And, someone also shared a recent thing that the small wins, or the little wins, just keep coming. And everything I do, every day I do them, they're wins. And it's great. So I guess that'll do it. Please, as always, like, share, subscribe, etc. And remember, stronger, sober. Thanks. All right, quick overtime here. So, first I had mentioned on the 15-minute part, of euphoria, I have a friend, Matt, who doesn't have the disorder, but since he knows people that do, has declared himself an expert, and he frequently challenges me. What do you mean it's only 15, or I would say 20 minutes of euphoria is all we get, of relief from drinking. And then we're in buzz limbo from there until we drink so much that we eventually get on autopilot, and that's where the bad things really happen. And, I try to explain to him, this is a progressive disorder, and that's how it works. I know big drinkers, they have fun for 2-3 hours. I said, yeah, that's often how it looks on the outside, but if they truly have the disorder, I can promise you that's not the case, almost with rare exception. So that's one thought. Another one is, I mentioned going to the family occasions, big gatherings, hating the small talk, and what I say on sobriety calls is I'm now trying to turn those, into some deeper discussions. And on sobriety meetings, we talk about, as Laura McCowan says, the group I'm in is called the Luckiest Club, based on Laura McCowan, who wrote this book, We Are the Luckiest, and talks about how everyone talks about the 90% of mundane in their life, but rare is it to talk about, the top 10% of your life and really share that. But that's what goes on these sobriety calls. And these aren't AA meetings, no offense to them, but I'm not sure they get as deep. These are Zoom calls in non-AA based communities like that one. So, I said, I've been going to these family occasions like Thanksgiving for, years now. I own a pizza shop for 5 years. One person that I really recall, it's my immediate, my parents really asked me, it was my cousin's wife, said, "Hey, how's the pizza shop going?" I mean, to me, I'd be fascinated. I had no experience in it. One of my relatives did that. I'd be all over them every time. What do you got? You got any good stories? How's that going? Etc. And no one really asked. But then I thought about, hey, I don't really ask them about their jobs. In fact, that my cousin's wife who asked me about it, I don't really even know what she does. So, shame on me as well. But that's what we're used to, especially in the Irish side of, small talk central. So I vowed to kind of go into this Thanksgiving, but didn't really get a chance. It didn't help. I was an hour late, so kind of avoided some of that. And then afterwards, we ended up playing cribbage, which reminded me when we were up in Vermont, we sat down for family breakfast. There were 7 of us. As soon as we ordered, my brother breaks out cards and starts playing with my father and my nephew, which all good for them. But I just thought it was funny. I mean, instead of, what do you got to wait 15 minutes for your food and trying to make some small talk, or perhaps a little deeper, heaven forbid, he goes right to the cards. So found that interesting, and I guess that'll do it. As always, appreciate you listening. Peace out.